I always thought I knew my wife, Clara, like the back of my hand. After 12 years of marriage, you start to believe you've mapped every corner of a person's soul. Their quirks, their silences, their laughter. Clara was my anchor, the woman who could make a grocery run feel like an adventure. Her auburn hair catching the light as she tossed a box of cereal into the cart with a playful smirk. We'd built a life together in our cozy Seattle suburb, a craftsman house with creaky floors and a backyard where our golden retriever, Max, chased squirrels. No kids, not yet, but we talked about it sometimes. Late at night, her head on my chest, her voice soft with dreams. I thought we were solid, unbreakable. I was wrong. It started with small things so subtle I barely noticed at first. Clara's phone, always face down on the kitchen counter now, when she used to leave it carelessly on the couch, screen glowing with notifications. The way she'd linger in the bathroom after a shower, the faint tap-tap of her thumbs on the screen, a sound I'd never paid attention to before. She'd laugh it off when I asked, saying it was just work emails or her book club group chat blowing up. You know how those ladies get about their wine and Jane Austen, she'd say, her hazel eyes crinkling at the corners. I believed her because I wanted to, because doubting Clara felt like doubting the ground beneath my feet. I'm a structural engineer, a guy who spends his days making sure buildings don't collapse. My job is about precision, about seeing the cracks before they widen. Maybe that's why, despite my trust in Clara, a part of me started cataloging the inconsistencies. She'd leave for her graphic design job at the same time every morning, her travel mug of coffee in hand, but she'd come home later than usual, her cheeks flushed, her stories vague. Client meetings ran long, she'd say, or traffic was a nightmare. Once, I noticed a faint scent on her jacket. Not her usual lavender perfume, but something sharper, like cedar and musk. I didn't ask about it. I told myself it was nothing, maybe a colleague's cologne from a crowded elevator. But the seed was planted, and it grew in the quiet moments, when she was asleep beside me, her breathing steady, and I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. One Tuesday in October, the first real chill of autumn creeping through the windows, I came home early. A project meeting had been canceled, and I figured I'd surprise Clara with takeout from her favorite Thai place. I parked in the driveway, noticing her car wasn't there, though she'd texted me at lunch saying she was swamped and might work late. No big deal, I thought. I let Max out into the backyard, his tail wagging like a metronome, and started tidying up the kitchen, the takeout bags still warm on the counter. That's when I saw her laptop, open on the dining table, the screen glowing faintly. She'd forgotten to lock it. I don't know what possessed me to look. Maybe it was the months of small doubts piling up, or maybe it was just boredom, waiting for her to get home. I sat down, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. Her email was open, a thread with someone named J. Carter. The subject line was innocuous, project updates. But the tone of the messages wasn't. Can't stop thinking about yesterday. One read, time-stamped from the previous evening. Your trouble, you know that? Another from Clara. Good kind of trouble, I hope. Same time tomorrow. My stomach twisted, a cold sweat prickling my neck. I scrolled further, my eyes skimming words that felt like punches. Your place? Missed you? Feels so right. There were no explicit details, no blatant confessions, but the intimacy was unmistakable. This wasn't a colleague. This was something else. I closed the laptop, my hands shaking. Max scratched at the back door, whining, but I barely heard him. My mind was racing, trying to piece together a timeline. Who was J. Carter? I racked my brain, thinking of her coworkers, her clients, anyone she'd mentioned. She talked about a new project manager at her firm, a guy named James, maybe. Was that him? I didn't know. All I knew was that my wife, the woman I'd vowed to love forever, was hiding something. Someone. When Clara got home an hour later, her hair damp from the drizzle, I was sitting on the couch, the Thai food cold on the table. She kicked off her boots, smiling, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Hey, you're home early. Oh, you got Thai? You're the best. She leaned in to kiss my cheek, but I pulled back, my jaw tight. Her smile faltered. Everything okay, Nate? I wanted to confront her, to spill everything I'd seen, but the words stuck in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I'd misread the emails? Blown it all out of proportion. I couldn't bear the thought of accusing her and being wrong, of seeing the hurt in her eyes. So I lied. Just a rough day at work, I said, forcing a smile. Long meeting. I'm beat. She nodded, her expression softening. Poor thing. Want me to heat up the food? We can watch that new documentary you were talking about. She moved to the kitchen, chatting about her day, her voice light, and I sat there, watching her, wondering how she could act so normal when my world was cracking apart. The next few weeks were a slow descent into paranoia. I became a detective in my own marriage, hating myself for it but unable to stop. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, finding nothing. No texts, no calls, just a frustratingly clean slate. She must have been deleting them, I thought. I started noting her schedule, cross-referencing her late nights with the emails I'd glimpsed. I even drove by her office one evening, my heart pounding, half expecting to see her with someone else. Her car was in the lot, the building's windows glowing, and I felt like a fool, sitting there in the dark, spying on my own wife. But the doubts didn't fade. They grew, fed by every small inconsistency. The way she'd smile at her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. The new dress she bought. A deep red number she wore to a work event I wasn't invited to. The way she'd pull away when I tried to hold her at night, murmuring that she was too tired. I started losing sleep, my work suffering, my boss pulling me aside to ask if everything was okay. I lied to him too. Just family stuff, I said. Because what else could I say? That I was unraveling because I thought my wife was... What? In love with someone else? The thought made me sick. Then came the night that broke me. It was a Friday, Clara saying she had a client dinner downtown. I offered to drive her, but she waved me off, saying she'd take an Uber. Don't wait up, she said, kissing my forehead, her lipstick leaving a faint mark. I nodded, playing the dutiful husband, but as soon as she left, I grabbed my keys. I don't know what I was thinking. Maybe I just needed proof, something concrete to stop the endless loop of suspicion. I drove to the restaurant she'd mentioned, a trendy spot with floor-to-ceiling windows. I parked across the street, my car hidden in the shadows, and watched. She was there, at a corner table, laughing, her hand resting on the arm of a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a smile that made my fists clench. They leaned toward each other, their faces close, her fingers brushing his as she passed him a glass of wine. It wasn't a client dinner. It was a date. I sat there, frozen, my breath fogging the windshield, watching my wife betray me in real time. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember letting Max out or pouring myself a whiskey, the bottle shaking in my hand. All I remember is the rage, hot and suffocating, mixed with a grief so deep it felt like drowning. Clara came home after midnight, her heels clicking on the hardwood. Nate, you still up? She called, her voice cheerful. I didn't answer, couldn't. She found me in the living room, the whiskey glass empty on the table, my eyes fixed on the wall. You okay? She asked, sitting beside me, her hand on my knee. I looked at her, really looked at her, searching for a trace of guilt, but her face was open, concerned. She was good, I realized. Too good. I saw you, I said, my voice low, barely a whisper. Her hand froze on my knee, her smile slipping just a fraction. At the restaurant. With him. For a moment she didn't speak. Then she laughed, a nervous sound that grated on my nerves. What are you talking about? It was a client dinner, Nate. You're being paranoid. Don't lie to me, I said, my voice rising despite myself. I saw you. The way you looked at him. The way you touched him. Her face hardened, her eyes narrowing. You followed me? Are you serious? That's insane, Nate. You're spying on me now. Tell me who he is, I said, standing, my hands shaking. Tell me the truth, Clara. She stood too, her arms crossed, her voice sharp. There's nothing to tell. You're blowing this out of proportion. I'm not doing this right now. She turned to leave, but I grabbed her wrist, not hard, but enough to make her stop. Don't walk away, I said, my voice breaking. Not until you tell me. She yanked her arm free, her eyes blazing. I don't owe you anything. You're acting like a lunatic. She stormed upstairs, the bedroom door slamming behind her. I stood there, alone in the living room, the silence deafening. Max whined from his bed in the corner, sensing the tension, but I couldn't move. I couldn't think. All I could see was her hand on his arm, her laughter, her lies. That night, I slept on the couch or tried to. My mind was a war zone, torn between love and betrayal, trust and rage. I didn't know who Clara was anymore, but I knew one thing. I couldn't let this go. Not after what I'd seen. Not after what I'd felt. The man I'd been, trusting, patient, devoted, was gone. In his place was someone new, someone who wanted answers. And, deep down, someone who wanted revenge. The days after that night were a blur of cold silences and forced normalcy. Clara and I moved through our house like ghosts, orbiting each other without touching. Breakfast was a ritual of clinking coffee mugs and curt nods, her eyes avoiding mine as she scrolled her phone. Mine fixed on the toast I couldn't bring myself to eat. I'd always prided myself on being steady, the kind of man who could analyze a problem, be it a faulty bridge design or a budget overrun, and find a solution. But this was a fracture in the foundation of my life, and no blueprint could tell me how to fix it. I didn't confront her again, not right away. Her denial at the restaurant had been so convincing, so laced with indignation, that a part of me wanted to believe I'd misread everything. Maybe it was a client dinner. Maybe the emails were just playful banter, not proof of anything deeper. But the image of her hand on that man's arm, the way her laughter had lit up her face in a way I hadn't seen in months, burned in my mind. I couldn't unsee it. So I did what I do best. I started building a case, piece by meticulous piece, like I was designing a structure meant to withstand an earthquake. First, I needed to know who he was. Jay Carter was my only lead, a name that felt like a splinter under my skin. Clara's laptop was now password protected, a change that hadn't gone unnoticed, so I turned to other sources. Her office had a website, a glossy page listing their team, and there he was, James Carter, Senior Project Manager. His photo showed a man in his late 30s, square-jawed, with a confident smile that made my stomach churn. His bio was bland: years of experience, awards for innovation, a passion for collaborative creativity. I hated him instantly, not just for what I suspected, but for how perfectly he fit into Clara's world. A world of sleek designs and late-night brainstorming sessions I'd never been a part of. I started tracking her movements, hating myself more with every step. I'd always scoffed at jealous husbands, the kind who checked their wives' phones or followed them to work. But here I was, downloading an app that synced with the GPS in her car. It felt like a violation, not just of her privacy, but of who I thought I was. The app showed her routine was mostly predictable: office, coffee shop, grocery store, but there were anomalies. Twice a week, she'd detour to an address in Capitol Hill, a trendy neighborhood with lofts and wine bars. The first time I saw it, my heart sank. The second time I drove there, the building was a modern complex, all glass and steel, with a doorman who looked like he'd seen every kind of drama. I parked across the street, my hands gripping the steering wheel, watching for her car. It was there, tucked into a visitor spot, and my pulse spiked. I waited, my eyes glued to the entrance, until I saw them. Clara and James walking out together, his hand on the small of her back. She was laughing, her head tilted toward him, her auburn hair catching the streetlights. They didn't kiss, didn't do anything overt, but the intimacy was undeniable. They climbed into his car, a sleek black Audi, and drove off. I didn't follow, couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly to turn the key. Back home, I poured myself another whiskey, the bottle now a familiar companion. Max lay at my feet, his brown eyes watching me, as if he sensed the storm inside me. I didn't tell anyone what I'd seen. Not my brother, not my best friend, Mike, who'd known Clara since college. Admitting it out loud would make it real, and I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I dug deeper. I created a fake email account and sent James a message, posing as a potential client interested in his firm's services. I kept it vague, professional, asking for a meeting. He responded within hours, suggesting a coffee shop downtown. I didn't reply. I just needed to know he was real, that he'd take the bait. He did. The next step was harder. I needed proof, something undeniable. I considered hiring a private investigator, but the thought of a stranger rooting through my marriage felt like another betrayal. So I did it myself. I bought a small tracking device, no bigger than a matchbox, and slipped it into the lining of Clara's purse one morning while she was in the shower. It was a coward's move, I knew, but I was past caring about morality. The device sent updates to my phone, mapping her movements with chilling precision. Most were mundane: her office, the gym, the bookstore, but every Tuesday and Thursday she went to that Capitol Hill address. Sometimes for an hour, sometimes longer. I didn't need to imagine what was happening. The truth was a knife, twisting deeper with every ping of the tracker. I started losing myself in the obsession. Work became a distraction I barely tolerated. My designs riddled with errors I'd never have made before. My boss, a gruff man named Ed, pulled me aside again, his brow furrowed. "Nate, you're slipping. Get it together or take some time off." I nodded, promising to do better, but my mind was elsewhere. I was mapping Clara's lies, cross-referencing her excuses with the tracker's data. One night, she said she was at a team-building event, but the tracker placed her at James's apartment. I sat in the dark, staring at the blinking on my phone, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The worst part was how normal she acted. She'd cook dinner, humming to herself, or curl up next to me on the couch, her head on my shoulder as we watched some mindless show. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to demand why she was doing this. But I didn't. I was afraid of her answer, afraid it would confirm what I already knew. That she didn't love me anymore, that she'd found something better in him. So I played along, smiling when she smiled, laughing when she laughed, all while the rage simmered beneath my skin. Then came the night I couldn't take it anymore. It was a Thursday, the tracker showing her at James's apartment again. I'd had 3 whiskeys, the bottle nearly empty, when I grabbed my keys and drove to Capitol Hill. I don't know what I planned to do. Confront them, maybe, or just sit there, torturing myself with the sight of her car. When I arrived, the street was quiet, the windows of his building glowing softly. Her car was there, parked carelessly, one wheel on the curb. I sat in my truck, my breath shallow, my hands clenched into fists. I waited, watching the clock tick past midnight, then 1, then 2. At 2:17 a.m., she emerged, alone, her coat pulled tight against the cold. She looked tired, her hair messy, her steps quick as she got into her car and drove off. I didn't follow her home. Instead, I stayed, staring at the building, imagining him inside, smug and satisfied. The rage I'd been holding back for weeks erupted, a white-hot wave that made my vision blur. I wanted to hurt him, to make him feel the pain I was drowning in. But I didn't. I drove home, the streets a blur, and slipped into bed beside Clara, who was already asleep, her breathing soft and even. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with possibilities. Confrontation wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted her to feel what I felt, to lose what I was losing. I wanted revenge. The next morning, I started planning. I didn't know what form it would take, but I knew it had to be precise, calculated, like one of my engineering projects. I began by gathering more information. I hacked into Clara's email again. Not hard, since she'd used the same password for years, just with a new number tacked on. The emails between her and James were bolder now, less guarded. "I can't wait to see you," she wrote. "You make everything better." His replies were worse. "You're all I think about. Leave him, Clara. We could be everything." My blood boiled, but I kept reading, saving screenshots, building my case. I also started watching James. I learned his routines: coffee at the same cafe every morning, gym at 6, drinks with colleagues on Fridays. I found his social media, sparse but telling. Photos of him hiking, at art galleries, at a bar with Clara's arm just visible in the frame. I saved those too. I didn't know what I'd do with it all, but I needed ammunition, something to make them both pay. One night, as Clara slept, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, staring at the folder of evidence I'd compiled: screenshots, GPS logs, photos. It was enough to confront her, to end our marriage in a blaze of accusations. But that felt too small, too fleeting. I didn't just want to end it. I wanted to destroy what they had, to make them regret ever crossing me. I started researching, diving into corners of the internet I'd never explored. Forums about betrayal, about revenge, about making people pay without leaving a trace. The ideas were dark, creative, cruel. I bookmarked them, my heart pounding, knowing I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. By the end of the month, I had a plan. It wasn't just about exposing them, though that would be part of it. It was about dismantling their lives, piece by piece, in a way that would leave them as broken as I felt. I didn't sleep that night, my mind too alive with possibilities, with the promise of justice. Clara had betrayed me, and James had taken what was mine. They thought they could hide, that I'd never know. They were wrong, and soon they'd see just how wrong. The plan took shape in the quiet hours, when the house was still and Clara's breathing was the only sound breaking the silence. It wasn't enough to confront her, to lay out the evidence and watch her squirm. I wanted her to feel the weight of her betrayal, to see her world crumble the way mine had. And James, he wasn't just a bystander in this. He was the architect of my pain, the man who'd looked at my life and decided he could take it. My revenge had to be surgical, devastating, and permanent. As a structural engineer, I knew how to find the weak points in any system. Clara and James were no different. They had vulnerabilities, and I was going to exploit them. The first step was to expose them, but not in the way they'd expect. A public confrontation would be too quick, too easily dismissed as a jealous husband's meltdown. I needed something that would linger, something that would follow them like a shadow. I started with their workplace. Clara's design firm was small, tight-knit, with a reputation for creativity and professionalism. An affair between a senior project manager and a married designer would be a scandal, especially if it came with proof. I created an anonymous email account, using a VPN to mask my location, and drafted a message to the firm's HR department. I attached screenshots of Clara and James's emails, carefully curated to show their intimacy without revealing my identity. I included photos from my surveillance, grainy shots of them leaving his apartment, her hand on his arm at the restaurant. The email was simple. You should know what's happening in your office. This isn't professional. I hesitated only a moment before hitting send. The seed was planted. I didn't stop there. James had a public persona, a LinkedIn profile polished to perfection, a Twitter account where he posted about design trends and industry events. I created a burner account on Twitter and started subtle, posting vague comments about unethical project managers and tagging his firm. I linked to articles about workplace affairs, letting the insinuations build. I knew he'd see them, and I knew Clara would too. The firm's social media team would notice the chatter, and questions would start to swirl. I wanted them to feel the walls closing in, to wonder who was watching, who knew. But that was just the opening move. The real plan was personal, tailored to hit them where it hurt most. Clara prided herself on her reputation, her talent, her ability to charm clients with her warmth and creativity. James, I learned, was ambitious, angling for a promotion to partner at the firm. Their relationship was their weakness, but so was their pride. I decided to dismantle both. I started with Clara's clients. Using the fake email account, I contacted her biggest accounts, posing as a concerned colleague. I've heard rumors about unprofessional behavior. I wrote, keeping it vague but damning. You might want to review your contracts with Clara Thompson. I sent similar messages to her freelance clients, the ones she'd cultivated outside the firm. I didn't expect them all to drop her, but doubt is a slow poison. One client, a boutique hotel chain, responded asking for details. I didn't reply, letting their imagination fill in the gaps. I knew Clara would hear about it. She'd always been sensitive to whispers about her work. For James, I went deeper. His apartment in Capitol Hill was his sanctuary. a status symbol he flaunted on social media with photos of his minimalist decor and city views. I found the property management company online and sent an anonymous tip, claiming I'd seen suspicious activity at his address. Late-night visitors, loud arguments, nothing specific but enough to raise eyebrows. I knew they'd investigate, maybe even check his lease for violations. I also contacted his gym, where he was a regular, and reported a lost wallet with his name on it, suggesting it might have been stolen. Small disruptions, each one a pebble in his shoe, designed to make him paranoid, to make him feel watched. The hardest part was keeping up the facade at home. Clara was still acting normal, or as normal as she could with the tension between us. She'd stopped mentioning work dinners or late nights, but the tracker showed she was still visiting James's apartment. I played my part, cooking dinner, asking about her day, even kissing her goodnight, though every touch felt like a lie. She didn't notice the change in me, or if she did, she didn't say. Maybe she was too caught up in her own secret to see mine. Then the first cracks appeared. Clara came home one evening, her face pale, her hands trembling as she poured herself a glass of wine. "Something weird's going on at work," she said, her voice tight. "HR called me in today. They wouldn't say why, just asked about my projects, my relationships with colleagues." She looked at me, her eyes searching, but I kept my expression neutral, stirring the pasta on the stove. "That's strange," I said. "Any idea what's up?" "No," she said too quickly. "It's probably nothing, just office politics." But I saw the fear in her eyes, the flicker of guilt. She knew something was wrong, even if she didn't know how wrong. James was next. I'd started following his Twitter more closely, and his posts had shifted, less confident, more defensive. He retweeted an article about workplace ethics, adding a cryptic comment, "Some people need to mind their own business." I smiled, sipping my coffee, knowing I was getting to him. The firm's social media had gone quiet, no longer responding to my burner account's posts, which meant they were circling the wagons. Good. Let them sweat. But I wasn't done. The final piece of my plan was the cruelest, the one that would cut deepest. Clara's birthday was in 2 weeks, and we'd always made a big deal of it. Dinner at her favorite restaurant, a weekend getaway, gifts I'd spent weeks choosing. This year, I planned something different. I booked a private room at the restaurant where I'd seen her with James, the same corner table. I sent invitations to her closest friends, her parents, even her sister, who lived in Portland. I told them it was a surprise party, a celebration of Clara's 35th. I also invited James, using the fake email account, framing it as a team appreciation event to get him there. He RSVP'd yes, oblivious to the trap. The night of the party, I told Clara we were going out for a quiet dinner, just the two of us. She seemed hesitant, her smile forced, but she agreed, slipping into the red dress she'd worn to one of her work events. I drove us to the restaurant, my hands steady despite the storm in my chest. When we arrived, I led her to the private room, where her friends and family were waiting, their faces bright with anticipation. James was there, too, standing awkwardly near the back, his smile faltering when he saw me. "Surprise!" everyone shouted, and Clara laughed, her hand flying to her mouth. But then she saw James, and her face froze, the color draining from her cheeks. I stepped forward, raising a glass, my voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "To my beautiful wife," I said, my eyes locked on hers. "To 12 years of love, trust, and honesty." The room went quiet, the word honesty hanging in the air like a blade. Clara's eyes darted to James, then back to me, her lips parting as if to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "I've been thinking a lot about what makes a marriage work," I continued, my voice calm but sharp. "It's about knowing your partner, really knowing them. And I've learned so much about Clara lately, about her late nights, her new friends." I pulled out my phone, the screenshots ready, and projected them onto the wall behind me. A slideshow of her emails with James, their photos, the GPS logs of her visits to his apartment. The room gasped, whispers rippling through the crowd. Clara's mother covered her mouth, her sister staring in shock. James took a step back, his face pale. "Nate, stop," Clara whispered, her voice breaking, but I couldn't. I turned to James, my smile cold. You must be James Carter. Thanks for joining us. I thought you'd want to celebrate Clara's birthday, too, since you've been such a big part of her life lately. The room erupted, her friends murmuring, her father standing, his face red with anger. Clara was crying now, her hands shaking as she grabbed her purse and bolted for the door. James followed, shoving past me, but I didn't care. I'd done what I set out to do. I'd exposed them, not just to each other but to everyone who mattered to them. Her reputation, his ambition, their secret. It was all ash now. I didn't go home that night. I stayed at a hotel, my phone off, ignoring the calls and texts from Clara, from her sister, from friends who didn't know what to say. The next day, I heard from Mike that Clara had moved out, staying with her sister in Portland. James had been suspended from the firm pending an investigation. The clients I'd emailed had started pulling their contracts, and Clara's freelance work was drying up. The property management company had sent James a warning about his lease, and his gym had banned him over the stolen wallet incident. My pebbles had become an avalanche. I sat in my hotel room, Max at my feet, and stared out at the Seattle skyline. I'd won, hadn't I? I'd made them pay, made them feel the pain they'd caused me. But as the adrenaline faded, all I felt was emptiness. The house was quiet without her, the bed too big, the kitchen too clean. I'd destroyed their world, but mine was in ruins, too. Revenge was supposed to feel good, wasn't it? So why did I feel like I'd lost everything?